He was considered one of the greatest character actors of his generation, but the amount of activism in homosexual community and the social, what do you call, process community was well known. And a lot of him was basically not say hid from the public, but it wasn't really publicized. But again, his time in the Waltons changed TV history after being a key Broadway and a movie actor for a number of years in Cold Blood, Seconds, key movies like that. The great Will Geer. Now, Will Geer, born William Augie Geer, Ghere, in Frankfort, Indiana, was an American actor, musician, and social activist who was heavy into labor organizing and other movements in New York and SoCal in the 30s and 40s. In California, he befriended a rising singer Woody Guthrie. They both lived in New York for a time in the 1940s. He was eventually blacklisted in the 1950s by Hollywood after refusing, in testimony before Congress, to name persons who had joined the Communist Party. In his later years, he was again best known in his role as Grandpa Zebulon Zeb Walton in the TV series The Waltons from 72 until his death in 78. And he was nominated in consecutive seasons for Best Supporting Actor and won several times. Now, again, born in Frankfort, Indiana, the son of Catherine, a teacher, and Roy, a postal worker, his father left the family when he was 11. He was deeply influenced by his granddad, who taught him the botanical names of the plants in his native state. He started out to become a botanist, studying the subject and obtaining a master's degree at the University of Chicago. While at Chicago, he was a member of the Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity. Anglicizing his name, Geer began his acting career touring in 10 shows and on river boats. He worked on several social commentary documentaries, including narrating Sheldon Dick's Men in Dust about silicosis among miners. He created the role of Mr. Mister in Mark Blightstein's 1937 To Cradle Will Rock, playing Candy in John Steinbeck's theatrical adaptation of his novella of Mice and Men, and appeared in numerous plays and reviews throughout the 1940s. From 48 to 51, he appeared in more than a dozen key movies, including Winchester 73 as Wyatt Earp, Broken Arrow, Comanche Territory, All 1950, and Bright Victory. Now, he eventually became a dedicated activist, touring government work camps of the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s with folk singers such as Burl Ives and Woody Guthrie, whom he introduced to the People's World and the Daily Worker. In 1956, the duo released an album together on Folkways Records titled Bound for Glory, Songs and Stories of Woody Guthrie. In his biography, his lover Harry Hay described Geer's activism and their activities while organizing for the strike. He's credited with introducing Guthrie to Pete Seeger at the Grapes of Wrath benefit, which he organized in 1940 for migrant farm workers. He acted with the group theater in New York, studying under Harold Clurman, Cheryl Crawford, and Lee Strasberg. He acted in radio, appearing in Mephistopheles, The Devil, and the 38 and 44 productions of Norman Cowan's The Plot to Overthrow Christmas. He also acted in radio soap opera Bright Horizon. Now, he was active from 1927 to his death in 1978, and each part he did was very unique. Now, unfortunately, he was blacklisted in the early 1950s for refusing to testify before the House Committee on Un-American Activities. As a result, he appeared in very few films over the next decade. Among them was The Salt of the Earth, which starred and was produced, directed, and written by blacklisted Hollywood personnel. It told the story of a miners' strike in New Mexico from a pro-union standpoint. The film was denounced as subversive and faced difficulties in its production and distribution as a consequence. Now, in 1951, Geer founded the Will Geer Theatricum Botanicum in Topanga, California, with his wife, actress Herta Ware. He combined his acting and botanical careers at the Theatricum, cultivating every plant mentioned in Shakespeare's plays. Now, during the late 50s and early 60s, he played several seasons at the American Shakespeare Festival in Stratford, Connecticut, not to be confused with Stratford, Canada. In addition, he created a second Shakespearean garden on the theater's grounds. By this time, he had also worked sporadically again on Broadway. In '64, he was nominated for the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical for 110 in the Shade. In '67, he performed a soliloquy as the prosecutor, delivering the closing argument against the two murderers in his film, in Cold Blood, of course, seconds a year before with Rock Hudson. In 72, he played the part of Bear Claw in Jeremiah Johnson. Now, in 1972, he got his biggest role. He was cast as Zeb Walton, the family patriarch of the Waltons, a role he took over from Edgar Bergen, who played the character in the TV movie upon which the series was based. He won an Emmy for an Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series for the Waltons in 1975. When he died, shortly after completing the sixth season of the Waltons, the death of his character was written in the show's script. His final episode, the last episode of the 78th season, depicted him being reunited with his on-screen wife Esther, played by Ellen Corby, as she had been absent for the entire season due to a stroke. His character was born on screen during the first episode of the 1979 season, entitled The Empty Nest. Now, his personal life was very complicated, and I'm not saying anything to judge, only as a public service as to what he thought was good for him and those he loved. He married actress Herta Ware in 1934. He and Ware had 3 children, Kate Geer, Thad Geer, and of course the great actress Ellen Geer. Ware also had a daughter, actress Melora Marshall, from another marriage. Although he and Ware divorced in 1954, they remained close for the rest of their lives. In 1934, Geer's life changed heavily when he met Harry Hay at the Tony Pastor Theatre, where Geer was working as an actor. They soon became lovers and eventually were life partners. He and Hay participated in a milk strike in L.A. Later that year, he and Hay performed in support of the San Francisco General Strike, where they witnessed police firing on strikers, killing 2. He was a committed leftist, with Hay later describing him as his political mentor. He introduced Hay to LA's leftist community, and together they took part in activism, joining demonstrations for laborers' rights and the unemployed, and on one occasion handcuffed themselves to lampposts outside UCLA to hand out leaflets for the American League Against War and Fascism. He also became a member of the Communist Party of the United States in 1934. After Hay had been becoming increasingly politicized, Geer introduced him to the party. In 1934, he and Hay gave support to a labor strike at the port of San Francisco, part of the 1934 West Coast waterfront strike. Geer became a reader of the West Coast communist newspaper, People's World. Now, the garden and botanical efforts were strong as well. He maintained a garden at his vacation house called Geer Gore Gardens in Nicholas, Connecticut. He visited often and attended the local 4th of July fireworks celebrations, sometimes wearing a black top hat or straw hat, and always his trademark denim overalls with only one suspender hooked. He also had a small vacation house in Solana Beach, California, where his front and backyards were cultivated as vegetable gardens rather than lawns. Now, as he was dying on April 26, 1978, a respiratory failure, age of 76, his family sang Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land and recited poems by Robert Frost at his deathbed. His remains were cremated, and his ashes are buried at the Botanicum in the Shakespeare Garden in Topanga Canyon, California. And his death really put everything in focus. He had worked so hard to be accepted, and here he was on the most popular, Christian soap opera of the decade, despite being a communist and a leftist and a gay person and a botanist. So go figure. Now, a big TV film and filmography. The Chevrolet Tele Theater, 1948, just selected ones. Lust for Gold in 49, Intruder in the Dust, The Kid from Texas, Comanche Territory, Winchester 73, Broken Arrow, Convicted, very good movie, Bright Victory, The Barefoot Mailman, The Searchers in 1956, Advise and Consent, East Side, West Side, Black Like Me, The Trials of O'Brien, Seconds again, The Crucible, Garrison's Guerrillas in Cold Blood, The President's Analyst, I Spy, Run for Your Life, Of Mice and Men, Mission Impossible and The Invaders, Banderolo, Gunsmoke, Certain Honorable Men, Mayberry RFD, Here Comes the Brides, Bonanza, played 3 parts, Hawaii Five-0, Dencom Bronson, Daniel Boone, The Reavers, I Walk the Line, Name of the Game, The Moonshine War, a very underrated movie, Brotherhood of the Bell, Pieces of Dreams, The Bold Ones, The Senator, The Bill Cosby Show, Medical Center, Shooting the Moonshine War, The Bold Ones, The Lawyers, Sam Hill, Who Killed Mr. Foster, Love American Style, O'Hara U.S. Treasury, Jimmy Stewart Show, again, The Waltons, 72 to 78, The Scarecrow, Bewitched, The Sixth Sense, Jeremiah Johnson, The Rowdy Man, very good performance with Gordon Pinson, very underrated performance. Napoleon Samantha, Night Gallery, Columbo, A Stitch in Crime, Harry O, Kung Fu, Isn't It Shocking, Executive Action, The Hangman, Hurricane, The Manchu Eagle, Murder Caper Mystery, The Night That Panic America, obviously the War of the Worlds movie, Moving Violations, Hollywood on Trial, Starsky and Hutch, Hee Haw, The $1 Billion Hobo, Eddie's Enough, where he was nominated for an Emmy for that. The Love Boat, he was nominated for Emmy as well, and also the Waltons. His last performance that was shown was the Mafu Cage in 1979. Now, discography, Folkways, the original version, Ecology 1, readings by Will Geer and Ellen Geer. Woody's Story is told by Will Geer and sung by Dick Wingfield. American History and Ballad and Song, Volume 2. Mark Twain, readings from the stories and from Huckleberry Finn, 1961. Hootenanny at Carnegie Hall, 1960, Folkways Records. And Bound for Glory, Songs and Stories of Woody Guthrie, Folkways Records. Now, when Will Geer appeared on the Waltons all those years, the unique characterization he did, because, he liked the recipe, he liked a good dance, he liked the women, he liked the tension, but he was a proud man, and he was sort of the sage of the show, but with Ralph Waite and Richard Thomas and Michael Learned, very strong cast, but Ellen Corby, he really stood out because he was, at the time, he was everybody's grandfather. And we liked Will Geer. We didn't agree with his politics. A lot of people didn't agree with sexuality, or maybe didn't agree with his garden, but he was the grandfather. When you think of the grandfathers, we were growing up in the 1970s, Will Geer was it, because we wish all of our grandfathers was that. He had to be strong when he had to be strong, and be loving when he had to be loving. Especially, remember the scenes when one of the clan was starting to smoke, and he was basically saying, "Smoke her up, you learn not to smoke again." And he was always he didn't play favorites with what they call the Walton children, although he had a great connection with Elizabeth and, of course, John Boy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think the world is missing a lot that Will Geer's not with us. But my personal favorite, again, I have 4 personal favorites, pretty well Waltons all the way through. In Cold Blood, Seconds, and Night Gallery, who plays that kind of unusual connection with Slim Pickens in relation to end of life purchases. It's quite good. I would like to see him play the devil in a Night Gallery episode. That would have been great. But he never played an episode of The Twilight Zone back in the day because he was just still coming off the blacklist. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story of everybody's grandfather, Will Geer. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And don't forget, requests are always accepted and always highly considered. Have a good one. Bye.